Hello and welcome to the Royal Society and the fourth conference in the food chain series for NOAA. The title of this year's NOAA event is Feeding the World, and we'll be looking at how those of us in the animal health industry can meet the challenges of increasing demand for protein-based food both in developed countries and the emerging nations of the world. We're fortunate to have a selection of highly qualified speakers who will address various aspects of how science can be used to safeguard food supplies, improve human and animal health, and at the same time contribute to protecting the environment. It is our hope at NOAA that today's event will lead to a meeting of minds and a sharing of knowledge that will benefit our industry and help us to meet the challenges of the future.
A comment made in the veterinary record a short while ago on feeding the 9 billion. And that's 9 billion is not a fiction figure, but that is what this world and this planet is going to have to attend to.
Although food production is increasing in general, whether it can keep going at the 75 million people a year, which is what the global increase is, which is larger than the population of the UK every year, we have to see. But science and technology will be absolutely vital in order to make sure that we can produce enough food to feed people.
My view is that the land that is there for nature, we need to do a great deal more with. But the land that's there for production, we have to use to its greatest capability, because the idea that we're going to have to be able to bring more and more land into production over the next few years, that is gone. I think the 21st century solution will be very much to produce greater food on less land, and of course that will be essential then to use every technology we have, and that is where conferences like you are producing here today are absolutely right. We're not going to be able to bring more land into production, we're not going to be able to cut down the Amazon rainforest, so we've got to also make sure that animal medicines are available across the world. You don't want avian influenza spreading across the world or any such disease. We've had blue tongue in Europe, and that has been vaccinated against, and we've got to make sure the spread of disease stop.
Clearly the challenges that we face in feeding 9 billion people by 2050 means that we've really got to make some judgments about how we're going to produce enough food.
There are enough food inequalities across the world now in some countries, and we are seeing problems with prices rising on the food. And the only way we're going to address that is to do it more efficiently. So we're going to have to produce food more efficiently, and science and technology underpins that.
The term sustainable intensification actually came from this organisation here, the Royal Society, in their report that they produced 1 to 2 years ago on this whole situation regarding food production, food supply, food demand internationally. And I think it's a very useful term to think about where agriculture has to go, because although we will have to produce a significantly greater amount of food, we also have to look also at the environmental and the social implications of what that intensification brings.
The protection of landscape and livestock production is, in the UK, a crucial part of how we get sustainable systems to function. And what we need to do is, if you like, have a sort of a balanced scorecard approach where we take into account the 3 pillars of sustainability, so that's economic, social and environmental. And depending on the particular climate and land type, will determine what is the optimum balance between those 3 parts of a sustainable system.
In order to meet these fairly staggering statistics that in 50 years' time the world population will require 100% more food, and the conclusion has been drawn by various scientists and authors that much of this, in this case 70% of this food, must come from efficiency improving technology. And I was very heartened to hear Neil Parish say this morning that we must embrace new technology, and this probably applies particularly to Europe and the UK, and part of my message this morning is very much along those lines. And what we must help to do is to provide the appropriate transparency and regulation of this technology so that people do not distrust it. It's probably fair to say that there's a need for more collaboration in terms of new product development. The commercial potential of some new products can be very obvious to an animal health company wanting to invest and develop new products for the future. But particularly where we're talking about some of these diseases which primarily affect the developing world right now, they could pose a threat to Europe, for example, in future years, and there may be need for partnerships in order to fund those kinds of development. Conclusions then, and to an extent we've heard it already. Intensive livestock production will continue to be needed due to increasing product demand. Disease risks will increase due to intensification, climate change and increasing transport and travel. And overall, livestock production efficiency is reduced at least 20% by disease. And those are FAO figures, and I should have mentioned that earlier, I apologise. Emerging diseases pose a significant challenge to animal and human health, and therefore there is a continuing need for effective medicines and vaccines, and for the continued development of new and better products.
We need to encourage regional integrations on member states for governance of science and technology policy. Then integrated international effort to address the constraints to agricultural and livestock production. Then we have technology transfer, which is very crucial for these things to succeed through joint scientific research between the developed and the developing world. Then ensure that the scientific knowledge is transformed into products that can help solve problems.
The collaboration between the developed world and the developing world will be very key to addressing the needs of sufficient protein production in terms of addressing the challenges in terms of research and science development, because the developed world has the advantage of high technological advances that can benefit the developing world. And so through partnerships and collaborations, this will make it possible to achieve the challenges that constrain the sufficient supply of protein.
We need to get governments talking to each other. The fact that we as a very small industry have to repeat clinical trials, we have to repeat safety dossiers to different authorities all around the world is a real issue. And if we could get these guys talking to each other, if we could just submit one file worldwide, that would be revolutionary and would create so much more cash for innovation in our industry.
One of the dilemmas we have in relation to our animal health regulations is that a lot of them are based on human pharma regulations.
We could easily have animal health related regulations that would make a significant difference to our industry, be far more beneficial for our industry and not so farmer related. That's what we as an industry association would like.
Those were some of the thoughts from a selection of speakers at NOAA's Feeding the World conference at the Royal Society today. It has been an extremely interesting day and I hope a rewarding one for our delegates, speakers and guests. We've been fortunate to have a panel of speakers with a broad scope of expertise, from systems research to animal medicine, human nutrition, environmental sustainability and for the needs of developing countries. We've also been given a pretty comprehensive overview of the role of animal science today and the potential it has to change the lives in the future. With the pace of change in the world, events like these become increasingly important as a way of exchanging views and information to keep our animal medicines industry ahead of the curve and play our part in contributing to the future security of the world's food supply.